Welcome to the channel Eternal Sleep Story. If you enjoy relaxing tales that help you unwind and drift gently into sleep, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Tonight we have a very special story for you, one that carries you into a world of gentle magic, kindness, and wonder. So, make yourself comfortable, let your body relax, and let your mind wander as we begin. Once upon a time, in a quiet little town, surrounded by rolling hills and endless meadows, there lived a kind and gentle young woman named Belle. Her name meant beautiful, but her beauty was not only in her face. It lived in her heart, in her kindness toward others, and in the soft patience with which she moved through the world. She lived with her father, a humble merchant, who had once been prosperous, but had since lost most of his fortune. Still, the two of them lived peacefully, cherishing the simplicity and calm of their days. Belle spent her mornings reading books beneath the shade of tall, whispering trees. She loved tales of faraway lands, enchanted castles, and forests where magic seemed to linger in the air like the soft fragrance of spring flowers. Her father often watched her with a smile, knowing that her imagination carried her further than any carriage could ever take her. Life was simple, yet not without its quiet challenges. After her father's business had failed, they had moved from their once grand home to a modest cottage at the edge of the woods. Some might have mourned such a change, but Belle accepted it with grace. She tended the garden, sang softly as she worked, and never once complained about what they had lost. Her days were filled with simple joys. The gentle rustle of the wind through the trees, the laughter of children playing in the distance, and the warm, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread that her father would sometimes make on quiet mornings. Her father, though aged and weary from his many travels and trials, was full of stories. He would sit by the fireplace in the evenings, recounting tales of faraway lands, mysterious forests, and strange encounters with people and creatures, both wondrous and peculiar. Belle would sit beside him, her eyes wide with curiosity, imagining every detail as if she were truly there, walking along cobblestone streets, wandering through flower-filled meadows, or wandering through majestic castles with towers that touched the clouds. Belle's beauty, gentle as it was, often drew the attention of others in the town. Some admired her grace and quiet wisdom, while others whispered envy, for her kindness made her shine in ways that no jewel or gown could match. But Belle was not concerned with such things. Her heart was open, her thoughts were gentle, and she carried herself with a humility that made her loved by those who truly knew her. Yet, despite her kind heart and gentle ways, there were moments when Belle felt a quiet longing, a yearning for something she could not yet name. She dreamed of adventure, of a life beyond the familiar streets of her town, beyond the gardens she tended and the cozy cottage she called home. She longed to see the wide world, to meet people from distant places, and to experience the magic that she had only ever read about in her books. One crisp morning, as the sun painted golden hues across the sky, Belle's father prepared for a journey. He had received news that a long-forgotten business venture in a distant town had finally borne fruit, and he needed to go in order to claim it. Though he had expected to go alone, Belle insisted on helping him prepare, carefully packing supplies, fresh bread, and letters of thanks for those who had helped them in the past. "Father," Belle said gently, her eyes full of warmth, "I wish I could go with you, but I will wait here and tend the garden until you return. Please be careful and hurry back safely." Her father smiled and squeezed her hand. "You are ever thoughtful, my dear Belle. I will return soon, and when I do, we shall share our stories of the journey and the wonders I have seen." And so, with the morning light casting a soft glow over the rolling hills, Belle's father set out, leaving her in the quiet comfort of their little cottage. Belle spent the days tending the garden, reading her beloved books, and imagining the many places her father might visit. Yet, as the days passed, a storm of misfortune quietly gathered. In a distant town, Belle's father encountered trouble, an unexpected turn of events that would forever change the course of their lives. A storm had struck, delaying his journey and causing his goods to be lost or damaged. When he finally returned home, weary and burdened by misfortune, Belle rushed to greet him. Her heart ached at the sight of his tired eyes and furrowed brow. "Do not worry, father," Belle said softly, her voice a gentle balm against his weariness. "We still have each other, and together we will find a way to be happy again." Her father, though filled with gratitude for her unwavering kindness, knew that their lives were about to take an unexpected turn. One evening, while traveling back from town to fetch a final shipment of goods, he had lost his way in the dense forest. The wind whispered through the towering trees, carrying an eerie song that chilled the air. He stumbled upon a path he had never seen before, illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. There, in a clearing, stood a castle, grand, imposing, and surrounded by an aura of quiet magic that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the night itself. Drawn by necessity and a hint of curiosity, he approached the castle. The doors opened seemingly of their own accord, revealing a hall filled with an ethereal light. He wandered through corridors lined with tapestries, each depicting scenes of mystical landscapes and legendary creatures. The air was thick with the scent of roses and candle wax, and the walls seemed to hum with a quiet, almost imperceptible music. Soon, he found himself in a room adorned with a table laid for a feast. Yet no one sat to eat. As he reached for a loaf of bread, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the hall. "Who dares to enter my home unbidden?" it asked, both commanding and sorrowful. The merchant, trembling yet compelled, bowed his head. "I am but a weary traveler, lost and in need of shelter. Please forgive my intrusion, noble master." From the shadows emerged a figure, a beast of towering height, with eyes that glimmered like amber in the candlelight. Though fear surged through the merchant's heart, he sensed a deep sadness within the creature. The beast's roar softened into a sigh, and with a voice that carried both power and loneliness, he spoke again. "You may stay. But remember this, should you ever take more than is offered, the consequences will be grave." The merchant, grateful yet frightened, accepted the terms without question. He was fed, given a place to rest, and in the morning he awoke to find the castle as silent as a dream, with no sign of the beast. Remembering his promise, he left, but in his hands he carried a single rose, a flower of exquisite beauty, soft as velvet, and glowing with a light that seemed almost otherworldly. Days later, news of his encounter reached Belle. When he told her of the castle and the beast, her eyes widened with a mixture of fear, wonder, and curiosity. "Father," she said, "this is no ordinary tale. There is magic here, a story waiting to unfold. I feel it in my heart." And so, the threads of fate began to weave together. The peaceful days of their cottage would soon give way to an adventure of the heart, one that would test courage, kindness, and the deepest essence of love. Belle's father, aware of the enchantment surrounding the castle, spoke quietly. "My dear Belle, the beast, he is not like us, yet I sense that there is more to him than meets the eye. He has suffered perhaps long and deeply, and he is lonely. We must tread carefully, but I trust your wisdom and kindness will guide us." Belle listened intently, her mind drifting between worry and wonder. The rose, still delicate in her hands, seemed to pulse with a quiet magic, hinting at the journey that awaited them. She felt a strange pull, a gentle insistence from deep within her heart that she must see this castle and the beast for herself. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Belle gathered warm cloaks, food for the journey, and the books she could not bear to leave behind. Her father, though anxious, encouraged her spirit of courage and curiosity. Together, they set out toward the distant castle, where the unknown waited, silent, patient, and filled with a kind of magic that only those with pure hearts could perceive. The forest through which they traveled was alive with quiet wonder. Birds sang lullabies from hidden branches, and the wind carried scents of wildflowers, damp earth, and the faint perfume of something magical, almost like a whisper from another world. Belle walked with careful steps, listening to the symphony of nature, her heart attuned to every rustle, every sigh, and every glimmer of light that danced upon the leaves as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, rose, and deep violet. The castle appeared once more, even more grand and mysterious than her father had described. Its towers reached skyward, lost in the soft embrace of mist, and its windows glowed with a welcoming warmth. Belle felt a shiver of anticipation mixed with awe. This place, she knew, held secrets, trials, and perhaps even the answers to the longings of her heart. The castle doors opened as if they had been waiting for her, revealing corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely, lined with portraits of faces that gazed upon her with quiet expectation. She felt no fear, only a profound sense of curiosity and wonder. Somewhere deep within the castle, she knew the beast waited, and the story of her life, and perhaps of love itself, was about to change forever. Belle stepped carefully across the marble floor, her soft footsteps echoing through the cavernous hall. Each corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, adorned with tapestries depicting enchanted forests, grand balls, and castles that sparkled under starlight. The air was filled with a faint, sweet scent of roses and candle wax, mingling with something unplaceable, an essence of old magic, quiet and patient. She ran her fingers lightly along the polished walls, marveling at the craftsmanship and wondering about the hands that had built such a place. As she ventured further, she came upon a grand staircase, winding upward in spirals, disappearing into the mist above. Golden light spilled from sconces along the wall, casting dancing shadows that seemed almost alive. Her heart fluttered with a mix of apprehension and excitement. Every step she took carried her closer to the unknown, yet her curiosity outweighed any fear she felt. At the top of the stairs, she discovered a corridor lined with portraits of beings she could not recognize, creatures of strange beauty, some with wings, some with eyes that seemed too knowing, and all of them gazing down at her silently. One portrait in particular caught her attention. A young man with kind eyes and a soft smile, wearing a crown that glimmered faintly in the candlelight. She felt a strange pull, as if the figure in the painting were somehow familiar, a memory long forgotten, but waiting patiently in the corners of her mind. Then she heard it, a low, measured sound, neither holy growl nor voice, but something in between. Belle froze, her breath catching in her chest. The sound seemed to vibrate through the walls, filling the corridors with a presence she could not see, but could feel deeply, slowly, cautiously. She followed the sound, her senses heightened, every nerve alert. The source of the sound revealed itself in a vast hall, lit by a grand chandelier, whose crystals refracted the light into 1,000 tiny rainbows. There, standing in the center, was the beast. He was larger than any man she had ever seen, his frame powerful, yet graceful. His fur was deep, dark, and soft, shimmering faintly in the light, and his eyes, golden and profound, held a mixture of sorrow and something else she could not name. Perhaps hope, perhaps longing. Belle's first instinct was fear, and yet it was quickly replaced by something gentler. She noticed the slight slump of his shoulders, the quiet hesitancy in his posture. He was not merely terrifying, he was lonely, burdened by a sadness that seemed to radiate from him in waves. She took a careful step forward. "Hello," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. I am Belle. I did not mean to intrude." The beast's eyes met hers, intense and searching. There was a pause, a moment that stretched, filled with unspoken words. Then, in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, but held a strange warmth, he spoke. "You are not afraid," he said. "Most would run. You walk forward." "What?" Belle swallowed, her throat dry. I do not wish to bring harm," she said gently. "I came here because I wish to see the castle and to understand." For a long moment, the beast regarded her silently. Then, with a gesture that was both commanding and inviting, he stepped aside. "Then you may stay, but you must promise to respect this place and to take nothing that is not freely given." "I promise," Belle replied, bowing her head slightly. And so, She entered the world of the castle, a place where time seemed to slow, and the walls themselves whispered stories of the past. Days passed, though Belle could scarcely tell one from the next. She explored the grand library, where books towered above her head, filled with knowledge both mundane and magical. She wandered through gardens that bloomed in perpetual twilight, with roses and lilies, fountains and statues that seemed almost alive. And always, in the back of her mind, she carried the presence of the beast, sometimes near, sometimes distant, but always there. The beast, for his part, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. He had lived alone for many years, and trust did not come easily. Yet there was something in Belle that disarmed him. Her patience, her kindness, the way she seemed to listen, not just with her ears, but with her heart. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to relax in her presence, revealing glimpses of the man he once had been before. The enchantment had claimed him. Their days together settled into a rhythm. Belle would wander the halls, discovering hidden rooms filled with wonders. A music room where instruments played themselves. A dining hall where silver platters gleamed as though freshly polished. A conservatory where exotic birds sang melodies that filled the air with joy. And the beast would often follow silently, observing, sometimes joining her in quiet companionship, sometimes retreating to his private chambers. One evening, as the sun dipped behind distant mountains, casting the castle in hues of gold and rose, Belle wandered into a small, circular room at the top of a spiral staircase. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting not just her image, but the flickering light of candles that seemed to float in midair. She approached a mirror and gazed into it, seeing herself not as others saw her, but as she truly was, thoughtful, gentle, and full of quiet strength. The beast appeared behind her, his footsteps soft on the polished floor. "Do you like this room?" he asked, his voice low and careful. "It is peaceful," Belle said, turning to face him. "I can see myself clearly here, and it reminds me of who I am, not just who others think I should be." He nodded slowly. "That is why I like it too. It reflects what is true, not what is false." Over time, Belle learned more about the castle and its magic. She discovered that objects moved of their own accord, guided by a force both protective and whimsical. She found rooms that seemed to change with her moods, and hidden passageways that led to gardens, where the flowers whispered secrets of the forest beyond. And always, she sensed the presence of the beast, a guardian of this enchanted place, both fearful and lonely, yet longing for connection. One rainy afternoon, as drops pattered gently against the stained glass windows, Belle ventured into the dining hall. The beast was there, seated at the head of the table, his posture tense, his eyes shadowed with a quiet melancholy. She approached and placed a hand gently on the edge of the table. "Are you well?" she asked softly. He looked up, startled by the concern in her voice. I do not know," he admitted. "I have lived so long alone, and yet your presence is comforting, but I fear it as much as I welcome it." Belle smiled gently, her eyes warm. "Fear is natural, Loneliness is natural, but you do not have to face either of them alone. The beast regarded her in silence, the weight of his years and the curse upon him reflected in the depths of his gaze. And in that quiet moment, something shifted. A fragile bridge of trust, delicate yet unbroken, stretching between them. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Belle and the beast settled into a gentle companionship. They shared meals, explored the castle, and spoke quietly in the soft glow of candlelight. Slowly, the beast began to reveal parts of himself he had long hidden. A love for music that soothed his soul, a fascination with the stars that made him feel connected to the world outside, and a longing for friendship and understanding that had been denied to him for so long. Belle listened patiently, never judging, always offering warmth and understanding. And in return, the beast shared stories of the world before his enchantment, tales of laughter and sorrow, of triumphs and regrets. He spoke of the magic that had brought him here, a force both cruel and kind, that had taken the form of a curse, yet left the possibility of redemption if a heart could see beyond appearances to the truth within. One evening, as twilight settled over the castle and the first stars began to glimmer, the beast invited Belle to the grand balcony. The sky was painted with shades of deep purple and soft silver, the air cool and fragrant, with the scent of night-blooming flowers. "Look," he said softly, pointing to the horizon. "Even in darkness there is light. Even in solitude there is hope." Belle stood beside him, feeling the gentle breeze on her face. "Yes," she said quietly, "and sometimes hope comes not from the world outside, but from those who care enough to stay." The beast's gaze softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to hope, not just for the end of his curse, but for the possibility of love, friendship, and a life shared with someone who could see him as he truly was. And so, in the quiet castle, surrounded by the whispers of enchanted walls and the soft glow of candlelight, a bond began to grow, a bond of trust, understanding, and the slow, tender stirrings of affection. Belle and the beast had not yet spoken of love, for that would come in time, as naturally as the unfolding of a flower in spring. But the seeds were planted, nurtured by kindness, patience, and the gentle rhythm of shared days and nights. The days in the castle settled into a gentle rhythm, as if time itself moved more slowly within its enchanted walls. Belle awoke each morning to the soft glow of sunlight, filtering through tall, arched windows, and she could hear the faint rustle of leaves from the gardens that stretched endlessly beyond the walls. The air was perfumed with the mingling scents of roses, lilacs, and the faint, lingering essence of candle wax that seemed to permeate every corner of the castle. She explored room after room, discovering wonders she had never imagined. There was a music room where strings and keys moved of their own accord, playing melodies that lifted the heart and soothed the mind. A library stretched for what seemed like miles, shelves stacked high with books on every subject imaginable, tales of distant lands, ancient spells, histories of kingdoms long forgotten. and stories of creatures both magical and mysterious. Belle often spent hours there, reading aloud softly, letting the words roll over her tongue and carry her imagination far beyond the castle walls. The beast watched her from afar at first, lingering at the edges of her presence like a shadow that could be both comforting and intimidating. Slowly, he began to approach, at first in silence, watching her movements, noticing the way her fingers traced the edges of a page, the tilt of her head when she paused to consider a story, the soft smile that played upon her lips. There was something about her that drew him, not with force or desire, but with a quiet inevitability. One afternoon, Belle wandered into the castle's conservatory, a space filled with sunlight, exotic plants, and birds that sang melodies she had never heard before. The air was warm and fragrant, carrying the delicate scent of blooming orchids and jasmine. The beast entered quietly, not to startle her, but to observe from a distance. When Belle noticed him, she gave a small, reassuring smile. "You do not have to hide," she said softly. "I am not afraid of you." For the first time, the beast allowed himself a flicker of something like relief. You see me as I am," he murmured, his voice low and almost uncertain. "Most see only the outside, the curse. But you look further." Belle nodded, stepping closer. "I see you, all of you," she said, "and I do not judge. You are more than appearances, as am I. We all have sides of ourselves we hide." The beast regarded her silently, feeling emotions he had long thought buried deep. Fear, hope, loneliness, and a cautious warmth that he did not yet fully understand. He inclined his massive head slightly, a gesture of tentative trust, and in that small motion, Belle sensed a turning point. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. The beast began to share small pieces of himself. The music he loved to hear, the books he had read in the long years of solitude, and even his favorite spots in the castle, where the sunlight struck just so, or where the flowers bloomed in perpetual beauty. Belle, in turn, told him about her life before the castle, her family, her dreams, and the books she cherished. She shared her thoughts quietly, allowing the beast to listen without judgment. And he responded in kind, revealing depths of his mind and heart that had long been hidden. One day, Belle discovered a small hidden garden behind a veil of ivy and roses. The garden was alive with enchantment. Fountains bubbled with crystal clear water that sparkled like liquid diamonds. Flowers glowed softly in the twilight, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of bees and the sweet song of birds. She wandered along the winding paths, touching petals and listening to the subtle music of nature. The beast followed quietly, watching her delight, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to forget his curse, to feel simply the joy of another's happiness. "Why do you smile so often?" the beast asked, a note of genuine curiosity in his voice. Belle turned to him, her expression calm and serene. "Because there is beauty everywhere, if you choose to see it, even here, even now, even when things seem difficult or lonely. Life is full of small miracles if you notice them." The beast considered her words carefully. In his many years of isolation, he had rarely thought of life in such a way. He had focused on his curse, on the loneliness that seemed endless, on the walls that separated him from the world. Belle's presence was like a gentle hand reaching through the darkness, offering light and understanding. Time in the castle was fluid. Days and nights blended, marked only by the subtle shifts of light and the quiet rhythms of the castle's magic. Belle would read by the soft glow of lanterns, her voice carrying faintly through the corridors. The beast often listened in silence, drawn by the sound of her words and the cadence of her thoughts. Occasionally he would join her, reading passages aloud in a voice that rumbled softly, blending with hers in a strange harmony. There were moments of laughter as well, soft and unexpected. The castle, once a place of solitude and melancholy, began to feel alive. Objects moved playfully. Doors opened with gentle creaks as if greeting Belle, and even the portraits on the walls seemed to lean in slightly, as if to observe the transformation unfolding within the castle's walls. Despite the growing warmth between them, the beast still struggled with his temper and his fear. He would retreat to his chambers at times, pacing in frustration, feeling the weight of centuries of solitude pressing down upon him. Belle, patient and perceptive, would wait for him, knowing that trust and affection could not be forced. Her presence alone, steady and unwavering, offered comfort that slowly began to heal the deep wounds of his heart. One evening a storm rolled across the land, dark clouds swirling above the castle, lightning flashing in the distance. Rain pattered against the windows, creating a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. Belle and the beast found themselves in the grand library, seated near the fireplace. The warmth of the fire and the steady sound of rain created a cocoon of safety and quiet. Do you ever fear that this connection between us will not last? The beast asked, his voice tinged with vulnerability. Belle reached out and placed her hand gently on his. Fear is natural, she replied softly, but so is hope, and I believe that the more we understand each other, the stronger we become. We do not have to face life alone. The beast considered her words, feeling a stirring deep within him, a mixture of relief, hope, and a cautious joy that he had not felt in many, many years. Slowly, he allowed himself to relax, leaning back in his chair, the tension in his massive shoulders easing for the first time in decades. As the storm continued outside, Belle and the beast shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. She told him of her dreams of travel, of discovering new worlds, and he, in turn, shared memories of a life before the curse, a life of learning, of love, and of loss. In the flickering firelight, their differences faded, and what remained was the quiet understanding of two souls finding solace in one another. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. Belle began to notice subtle changes in the castle. The way the gardens seemed more vibrant, the way the air felt warmer and softer, the gentle hum of life that had always existed, but now felt more welcoming. The magic of the castle, it seemed, responded to their growing connection, as if the very walls recognized the change in the hearts within them. The beast too began to change. He found himself smiling more, speaking with gentleness, and experiencing moments of joy that had long been absent from his life. The fear and anger that had once dominated his days were tempered by Belle's kindness, her patience, and her unwavering belief in the possibility of goodness and redemption. One afternoon, while exploring a distant wing of the castle, Belle discovered a hidden chamber filled with mirrors of every shape and size. Each reflected not only her image, but fleeting glimpses of places she had never seen. Forests bathed in golden light, mountains reaching into the clouds, rivers that sparkled like molten silver. She realized that the mirrors were enchanted, showing not just the present, but the possibilities of the world beyond, and the dreams that might yet come true. The beast entered quietly, observing her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. These mirrors, they show things that may never be, he said softly. Belle turned to him, her eyes bright with wonder. Perhaps, but they also show what is possible. And sometimes, possibilities are the most important things of all. He nodded slowly, considering her words. In that quiet chamber, surrounded by reflections of hope and dreams, he felt a stirring within him, a recognition that life, even in its darkest moments, could hold beauty, love, and the chance for change. The following days unfolded like the turning of gentle pages in a book. Belle discovered hidden nooks in the castle, where sunlight spilled in through high windows, casting golden patterns on polished floors. She found a small music room, tucked behind heavy velvet curtains, where instruments seemed to play themselves when touched by her soft hands. The melodies were delicate, floating through the hallways like whispers of wind. She laughed quietly, delighted by the magic, and the sound carried through the corridors to the beast, who listened from a shadowed archway. And so, in the quiet castle, surrounded by whispering walls and glowing gardens, Belle and the beast settled into a gentle rhythm. Trust blossomed, and small acts of kindness bridged the distance between them. Each day brought new discoveries, soft laughter, and shared moments of calm. The castle itself seemed to awaken, alive with the warmth of their growing bond. In that peaceful harmony, a fragile, tender hope took root, a promise that love and understanding might one day flourish, as naturally and gently as the flowers in the enchanted gardens.